Well, if you do the practice, then you're going to become more confident at drawing good circles and ellipses freehand. Hello, following the last video in which I showed you a very simplified method of getting started with drawing using a three-step approach, I had a lot of requests for the next stage. First, find yourself a subject to draw. That's going to be a simple cylindrical object like a can of tomatoes, whatever, a mug or something similar to that. You'll need a pencil, and I'd also like you to get a pen for this. A basic ballpoint pen is perfectly fine for this exercise. You'll need some paper, a decent size of paper. This is A4 sized, or a sketchbook. Again, reasonable size sketchbook is really useful for this. Something that gives you plenty of room on the paper to make nice big movements. Start by putting the object in front of you, maybe about arm's length away, so that you can see the top of the object at an angle and you have that elliptical shape. Next, you're going to draw simple shapes around the object, simply to box it in. So for the main body, you'd use like a rectangular shape. Then you're going to draw a box around the ellipse at the top and at the bottom. The one at the top, just make sure, if you're using a rectangle, that it touches the ellipse at the top and bottom and at the sides. If you're using a diamond shape, and I'd make sure that the edges of the diamond just make contact with the outside of the ellipse on each side there. That's going to give you your guide. For the bottom part of the object, it's the same sort of thing, okay? But obviously you can't see the back half of it, but just draw that diamond shape anyway, or that rectangular shape. And the thing I forgot to say is use the pencil for these construction lines. The next thing you're going to do is just to draw some straight lines across. Just do it freehand. This, again, it's just helping to get used to drawing freehand. Just draw a little straight line, nice and light, across, joining the corners of the rectangles or the diamonds, and then across from one side to the other. And then about roughly a third of the way in from each of the corners, on the diagonals, just make a little reference mark. That's going to be a little guide mark for you for the ellipse that you're going to draw. Now I'd like you to pick up the pen, and we're going to start drawing the ellipse. Why am I encouraging you to draw with the pen? Because it forces you to commit to drawing the line. I found doing this myself has given me a lot of benefits in having more confidence in my drawing, because I've had to simply accept the variation in the lines that I draw. So keeping inside that box, follow around, making a sweeping curve with your hand, trying to go through those main construction points, touching the edges and then going through those little guide points that you've just drawn and building up the ellipse. But remember to keep looking at your subject. So have a look at the subject first and then go back, just draw once around, look at it again, draw once around again, and keep on doing that until you've got a fairly satisfactory ellipse overall. It might look a bit like a bird's nest, but that's fine at this stage. You're building up your muscle memory, you're getting used to making these kind of movements, and you're doing more observation. It might be a useful tip, run your finger of your drawing hand around the edge of that ellipse that you can see. It's very much the same kind of movement that you're making with the pen on the paper. It's just that it's going in one flat plane like this. When you finish with the top of the object, look at the ellipse that you've got at the bottom for the curve of the bottom edge. Here, especially in the first few drawings that you do, I suggest you switch on your X-ray vision to imagine it's become transparent. Do the same exercise again. Look at your construction lines and then follow around it with your pen, following those movements around to build it up. And just notice how it's a slightly different curve that you see at the bottom compared to at the top, because you are getting a slight perspective effect. You're seeing it at a slightly different angle. When you finish this for this first angle of view, then move it either further away or closer to you, or maybe tilt it up towards you or away from you a bit, so you get a different view, and repeat this exercise another couple of times. After that, take a break, especially if you find that you're getting feelings of frustration, if you're getting tense about all of this, if your movements are getting very tense. Stop and take a break, relax. It's definitely better to do short, regular practice sessions than one long, painful session where you just get tired and probably quite bored as well. And what's the benefit you're going to get from this? Well, if you do the practice, then you're going to become more confident at drawing good circles and ellipses freehand. I've mentioned perspective a couple of times earlier. I'm not going to say too much about it here, but I'll say a little bit more in the next video. But there is one point which is worth being aware of. Later on, I'll give you a reference that you can follow if you really want to go into much more depth about the whole thing of drawing with perspective. A useful thing just to notice, but as you tilt it away and you start to see more of an ellipse shape than a circle, what you might notice is that gradually the point at the center of the circle is actually not any longer in the center of the ellipse itself. It starts to move away from you towards the top edge in this case. If it was on its side, you'd see it move towards the more distant side. Okay, so it's just a little subtle thing. If you're drawing something, say a circle with something at the center of it, like it might be a handle on the top of a jar or something like that, it's slightly offset as you tilt the whole thing away. The reference that I referred to is a handbook of perspective drawing by Joseph D'Amelio. I think it's out of print now, but it is available on the Internet Archive. You can also pick up second-hand copies, although they can be quite expensive. There's a link to that, to the Internet Archive, in the description below, and have a look at that. I strongly recommend looking up that resource if you want to go into much more depth about perspective. In the next video, I'll talk a little bit more about perspective, but also about applying this simplified approach and moving on from it in a wider range of subjects as you take your next steps in your art journey. Meantime, if you're struggling to just overcome some basic barriers to getting started with producing art, then watch this video next, or maybe this one. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.